After all the recent controversy, it caused me to go down the path of trying to understand boxing scoring criteria and how everything works. And I came to the conclusion that everything is way too subjective. And that's based upon a couple of the criteria, which I will get into later. But here's my way of bringing more clarity and objectivity to boxing scoring. Let's start here. If you don't agree with this, then you're not going to agree with the system. The goal of boxing is not just to hit and not get hit. The real goal is to maximize damage given and minimize damage taken. If you don't like this, then this system will not fit you. And I would say goodbye, but come stick around and have a little bit of fun. Listen to somebody else's perspective, right? If you like it or don't like it, comment why, subscribe, do whatever you want. Okay. But if you want to listen, then here we go. So the new way of looking at scoring I've been working on is trying to be more objective while still working within the criteria. And I try to do that within the framework of this concept called damage. And damage is about definitiveness. So the most definitive way to end a boxing match is in a KO, because your opponent's brain and body no longer function in a way that they can do anything to stop you. A KO is the greatest form of what I would call significant damage. Significant damage basically means where your cognitive and motor functions are inhibited to a visible degree. So the second greatest form of significant damage would be a knockdown, because your body is being shut down in a way to where you can no longer stand, and standing is a necessary part of boxing. So that's why a knockdown overrides almost everything in a round usually. And then the last example, the last type of significant damage of the three would be getting rocked or wobbled for an extended period of time. So, and that's when you lose control of your limbs, like usually your legs. And the perfect examples would be Zab Judah versus Tzyu, Eubank versus Liam Smith, or AJ versus Ruiz 1. And I also address something I call superficial damage, which would be like bruising and cuts. These are correlative with the end of a fight. They're correlative with a definitive end to a fight, but they're not causative. Just because you have bruises and cuts doesn't mean that you are maximizing damage or getting damage maximized upon you or whatever. So, but cuts can end fights, but they're usually in extreme circumstances, and those extreme circumstances are usually in the case of headbutts or elbows or other types of fouls. Although cuts sometimes do end fights from punches, but that's a lot more rare than getting rocked, wobbled, knocked down, or KO'd. Once we get past significant damage, things get more subjective, but I laid out a system to figure that out too. The boxing criteria are not all equal. There are two important criteria that override the other two. The two important criteria are hard and clean punches along with defense. Defense represents minimizing damage taken, while hard and clean punches represents maximizing damage. The other two criteria allow too much subjectivity into scoring and judging. They will literally allow for two different people to see two different fights and both of them be correct. Because ring generalship and enforcing your style is so vague and could technically be done by both fighters at the same time. Effective aggression basically boils down to landing clean and hard punches while being defensively responsible. So these two categories are mostly redundant and are distracting from the purpose we're looking for. So here's the system for breaking down hard and clean punches, but first I'll explain what hard and clean punches generally means. Hard refers to two things: the impact / force that you can visibly see, and hardness also refers to the effect it has on the opponent, basically the opponent's reaction. And then cleanness obviously refers to accuracy. Level 1 of hard and clean punches: minor impact, jabs, glancing blows, partially blocked punches that are absorbed on the defense without causing any significant visible effect. These punches have minimal impact and do not disrupt the opponent's balance, movement, or defensive capabilities. They're often seen as probing or setup punches. Level 2, noticeable impact, solid hooks, crosses, or uppercuts that land cleanly without causing a significant visible effect on the opponent. These punches have a more noticeable impact compared to level 1 punches. They may slightly move the opponent or momentarily disrupt their rhythm, but without causing any significant loss of control. Level 3, major impact. Level 3, powerful hooks, crosses, or uppercuts that visibly affect the opponent, causing a clear reaction such as a snapback of a head or visible change in the opponent's body language. These punches have a substantial impact on the opponent, momentarily disrupting their movement or balance. They demonstrate the ability to generate force and have the potential for accumulating damage. Level 4, final level, near / semi-significant damage. Punches that result in a slight wobble or a noticeable loss in motor control for a couple of seconds, indicating the opponent is on the verge of significant damage. These punches have significant impact on the opponent, causing a brief loss of control or stability. While they may not lead to a knockdown or knockout, they demonstrate the potential for significant damage if they were to continue or accumulate. And a quick side note, this video in the background is my favorite boxer, Naoya Inoue. It's a training montage of him because he's finna fight in July, and I can't wait for that. And I'm gonna break down some stuff around that too. But back into the scoring system. So basically, we're working underneath this concept of maximizing damage, minimizing damage. So this works on all ends of the extreme. Let's say we got Floyd, Devin, and Shakur on one end, and Wilder on the other end. Well, this works with Floyd, Devin, and Shakur because they're taking almost no damage. They're such a defensive mastermind. Well, especially Floyd and Shakur, no offense to Devin, but especially Floyd and Shakur, they're taking almost no damage. Especially if you look at the statistics, but you could just watch the fights and tell. They're taking almost no damage, almost no hard and clean punches are landing on them, and yet they're landing hard and clean punches. You don't have to be a knockout artist for this system to work. You can also be a very effective and skillful technical mastermind in the ring with great IQ. So with Floyd, a lot of things that people get wrong with people, especially somebody like Floyd, is that they say they don't have power and that somehow takes away from them. But with Floyd, if you look at his pull counter, which I think is probably the best counter in boxing history, that right hand where he pulls back and lands over top, that pull counter, boxers, when they get hit with that, they look like they got pepper sprayed in the face, because that right hand is so stingy and it slows down their offense, and they're like, they don't want to come in because they're afraid of getting countered. He shuts down them from maximizing damage, and he minimizes damage towards himself, and he starts beating their ass. And it's a similar thing with Shakur. And then with Devin, he's a little bit more offensively minded, and he mixes up great combos and stuff like that, and he maximizes damage through that way, and he beats his opponents up. But that's one end, which is like the skillful, more defensive end, and then on the other end you got Wilder, who can take some damage, and he's not super skillful, but a KO's the most definitive, right? So even if you're beating him for 10 rounds like Luis Ortiz did, even if you're beating him for all the rounds, if he hits you with that one shot, it doesn't matter, it's over, because a KO's the most definitive. He maximized damage. That is the maximum, right? And so yeah, I just want to explain how this system accounts for all styles, but then it also provides clarity. Ultimately, that's what I want. I don't want appeals to tradition where people say the boxing criteria is perfect just the way it is. It's been there for centuries, which I don't know how many people say that, but obviously the boxing scoring changed in like the 70s or 80s. And the boxing scoring is always going to change here and there, and it's different in some places here, and then the interpretation, blah blah blah. Basically, when we're judging fights, we want objectivity. We want as little human error introduced as possible. We want to be able to look at a fight like science. It's called science because when you run it through several tests, it should be able to pass those tests consistently. We want consistency. Consistency is the key. That's science, right? We want consistency and clarity, which is reached through objectivity. That's my goal, right? I want boxers to be given credit when they win, and I want boxers to know why they lost. So that's ultimately the goal here with everything that I'm breaking down. This is boxing scoring part 3. This is probably gonna be the final part, and I think that's all I got to say for right now. Immortality Serum out.
Immortality Serum is the faction. Plenty entertainment if you asking. Game of commentary and reactions. There ain't no faking, neither is the capping. It just goes lights, camera, action.